Hello, I'm Noir Nerd, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at a bit of 3D CSS animation, making a cube, well a dice in fact in this case, on CodePen with some basic JavaScript functionalities to roll the dice, basically to change the state of the dice to a random number. So basically we create a cube in CSS, and then when you click on the button, it basically rolls the dice and changes the dice face to whichever random number has been randomly generated. So without further ado, I'll show you the example I've already done, and then we'll go over how to actually make it. So this is the CodePen itself. It's very simple. We're starting with an initial value, roll. So it's like a cube. Click the button, it rolls. There's a random value is being generated, and then it does this little funky animation where it rolls to whichever particular number has been randomly generated. So it's quite cool. We're going to be covering HTML, CSS, and JavaScript we use to create this thing. Without further ado, I think now is the time to start writing. So you get the idea. You got a cube. On the click event, the random number's generated, and then it's rolling to the particular face on the cube that we want to display. So it's basically a basic dice, essentially, done in CSS and JavaScript. So without further ado, let's start coding. I'm going to be using CodePen this time instead of any IDE. I just think it's easier for ease of use, and this is quite a nice CodePen project anyway because it's just perfect. It's what CodePen's built for, really, just these small experimental little things. So let's get on with it. Okay, so we've got a blank slate now, clean slate, just a blank CodePen. So I think the first thing we're going to want to do is create the HTML and the CSS. We want to just create a cube, basically. It's not going to do anything in a minute. We just want to create the interface. So let's just create a heading. It says 3D dice, example, something. Just a heading. And then just some instructions. Click on the button to roll the dice. Here's the p tags, just a paragraph. Then we want to create the scene HTML, which will be like our wrapper for the cube. Then we want to create the cube CSS class reference itself, and then I'll just close that as well, and I'll close the scene. There's no CSS on it yet, so it's going to look just very stupid, but that will change. Next we want to do this. So we're going to basically create our cube faces, and then we'll go through the how to set that up to be like 3D, I guess. So in cube face, cube face 1. That's our first class. And we're going to put 1 because that's going to be the. It's going to have 1 in the actual body of that face, so we know what number it is. And all we want to do after that is basically just copy pasta. So we want 6, obviously. It's a dice. No, not one of those crazy D&D dices, so thankfully we don't have to do 20 sides or whatever it is in Dungeons and Dragons. It's crazy. 6. There it is. Now at the minute we've just got a very boring looking, and also we want to create a button, so we need to do that too. It's a bit bigger, so I'll just make this a bit. I'm trying to make this big so you can see what's going on. Obviously need to sort out my It's a bit easier to read. It's just because it's big, because I want you to be able to see it. Okay, then we want to make a button. So we're going to give it this button, give it a class, because this will have to have functionality on it later on with JavaScript. Roll button, and we'll go roll the dice button. Bada bing, bada bosh, we should have a button. Yeah, there we go. Roll the dice, and I've accidentally added it twice because I've not closed that. There we go. So we've got our. It doesn't look like much in the minute because I've just written the HTML, but we've got our basic skeleton of the HTML. That's basically that done, actually, to be honest. So let's move on to the CSS. So we're going to do this. Border box. That's for everything. That selector means everything on the page. Okay, we're going to add some styling to the body, with the body being everything in the contained in the body, which is of the HTML. I'm just going to add a font family for the font. I'll probably make it Roberto actually, or I don't know. Actually, maybe Monospace. I quite like that font. So you should see our. I think it's that way, isn't it? How do you spell it again? I think it's just no. Yeah, there we go. So everything's given a font now. Everything on the in the body. I mean, obviously, because this is a code pen, I don't have to write all the content of the HTML, but that would be in the body. Everything within the body. Then I'm going to give it a background of green, just because I want to give it a green background. Color white. The text is white. And then we'll see now that we've got our sort of. If you wanted to think of it, somehow it would be like the like board, if you will. Okay, next we want to set up our scene, which is like our wrapper. So it's class name scene. We define it with width 200 pixels, height 200 pixels. You should see some changes in a minute. Let's just quickly do this. I've set it to scene on AX. We want a margin of 20 pixels, and we're going to add this perspective 600 pixels. Okay, now we get onto our cube. So let's go onto our cube. This is where we start creating the CSS for the actual cube itself. So we want width 200 pixels, height 200 pixels, position relative. Okay, transform, do our 3D transforms, style. Preserve 3D. Transforms. Translate Z minus 100 pixels. And then transition transform, which is the one we've defined above, 1 second. So that defines the animation. Well, not the animation, sorry. Anyway, let's also create our cube face. You'll see that's here. You've got a cube face here, cube face there, class. And we're going to have multiples of these cube faces, but first let's just create the generic class for it. So it's cube, we can call it underscore face. We're going to make it position absolute, which which means it's positioned absolutely on the page. Width. So you should see these elements below start to change. If you can see it, hopefully. I'm not obscuring it too much. I'll shift myself a bit, actually. Be out of the way a bit. Okay. Okay, so we got, I want to make that width instead of width. Height wants to be 200, so you should start to see these changing a bit more now, as long as I get my spelling correctly. It's always a bit tough when you're trying to cover things quite fast. Border, 2 pixels, solid black. There we go, so you can see that that's starting to do something now. Obviously it's not exactly what we want in the minute, but line height 200 pixels. Font size, this is for the actual containing text, 40 pixels. Font weight, so make it nice and bold with the actual text, the numbers within the bold. Oh, not font bold, font weight. Bold. Color white, we don't need that actually because we've already got a set text align, which aligns the center. Okay, now you can see those, the font size is a bit too small, that's so made 4 instead of 40. Now we've got our faces. Bada bing, bada bosh. We've got faces. So that's the separated face of each cube face. So that's sort of that bit set up. But of course we've got different cube faces, so we don't want to just be showing one. So let's go on to the bit of, we'll do one and then we can just copy and paste the others. So we do cube face, 1 / 1 hyphen 1. Now in my example I made them black just to match like a so you'll see that change. Oh wait up, I also need to do this, so these should be different. Cube face 1, cube face 3, cube face 4, cube face 5, cube face 6. Okay, and then I wanted to give it a bit of opacity. In my example, you don't have to necessarily do this, but I quite like it with the opacity a little bit, just so you can see through slightly. And basically, we just repeat that across these, dun 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 6 times. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 right at the end. So you can see they've all now got they're all set. Okay, that's all well and good, but it's not actually 3D yet. It doesn't look 3D, it looks just a bunch of flat faces basically. So next thing we want to do is do some transforms on each to basically make it into a cube. So let's go I think this is it. Cube face 1, done, transform, rotate Y 0 degree, translate Z 100 pixels, bada bing bada bosh. And let's do it for the second one. We're going to change the values a bit, so 180 and not that, 2 and 100. Okay, let's build this up. 3. Sorry, it's a bit squashed. It's quite hard to really avoid that without it going too small for people to see. Okay, then we want to do 4. 4 minus 90 and 100. 5. And this is what these are the animations that will occur when the. I'm probably leaping ahead a bit actually. I should have really done the other bit first, but it's okay. This bit is really just, it's quite laborious, but yeah. Minus 90 and 100. Okay. Now let's do okay. Oops, sugar. What have I missed? Why they disappeared? Just try to figure out why some of them have disappeared. Go away, Copen. Let's try this. See what happens if I do this. No, I've messed something up there, sorry. I'll just quickly try and figure out what I've messed up. Probably a misspelling somewhere, no doubt. So it seems to start after number 2. That's fine. Okay, what I'll do, because I know that the other one works, is grab this, just because I don't want to get hung up to it for ages on this. Just want to see what this does. Yes, that's correct. And then I want to grab this code. I know this is just basically for creating the cube itself. Why isn't that working? I must have done something wrong. Cube face, hyphen, what? No. God, it's the divs. I didn't close the divs correctly. Oh my god. Make sure let that be a lesson to you. Always close your divs. There we go. Now we've got a 3D cube. Oh my god. So the mistake I made there, I just hadn't closed my divs. I was writing it really fast. I apologise for that. Basically, make sure you close your divs, and you should avoid head scratching like that. But basically now we've got our 3D cube. So basically what's happening here, I'll just go over it, is that we've got these 3D transforms. The transforms are affecting the Y and the Z axis. So one is the Z is the like this, Y is up, vertical, and that's what's happening there. Obviously you can play with that a lot, but if you just follow these, you're going to get a cube. Okay, so now we've got our cube. Did I add the animation? I think I did. I think now we've got the basic setup for the actual functionality. So we're going to tidy up the button a bit, make it look a bit nicer. It looks a bit generic at the minute. I'll just put it up here somewhere. As its sort of element, I'll add it here probably. So we go roll button, which is what I've called it. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what I decided to call it. Give it a background black. And we're almost done with the CSS now. Color, white. Border, none. I don't want a border around it. It looks stupid, I think. Margin, auto 0, which will basically center it. Font size, make it a bit bigger, 1.5 in the G40M. Which basically makes it 1.5 bigger than the normal. Margin top, 1 EM. Just a bit of a margin. I'm going to give it a width of 200 pixels. So it's the same width as the dice itself. So now, but there we go. Now we've got a dice. It doesn't do anything if we click on it. We can see that it's 3D from just the opacity. So now we want to give it some functionality. So hence we do entering into the world of JavaScript. So basically what we want to do is have an on-click event. Generates a number between 1 and 6. And then adds the specific class show in this case that we want to show. So show which is here. So like show. So for show 1, it'll rotate around to that specific. Do the basically 3D transform we needed to do to go to the number that's been landed on. So let's do that. Okay, so let's first we want to select our we want to create a variable for selecting our query selector equals. So this is going to select our cube element. So that's selected. Oop. And I've also misspelled selector. Select is a hard word. I'm just going to copy and paste it because it's just easier. Okay. That then creates a reference in memory to the cube class. Then we're going to want to reference to our button, which is called roll. I just called it roll button, so I'll call it roll button. And I'll just copy and paste this. What's the point of typing all of that out again? And this needs to have an equals as well for an assignment. Query selector, and we want to go roll button. Uppercase B, because it's uppercase B. Make sure the case is correct. The generic class is going to be current class nothing, so it's going to be set to an empty string. There we go. Next, we're going to write a function for generating a random number between 1 and 6. It has to be between 1 and 6 because there can't be a 0 or anything above 6. That wouldn't make any sense. Because in our example, we've only got it's a dice face with. But you could, with this function, you could make it more. But let's just write this. So generating a function, giving it minimum and max params. Min equals. And then we're going to do a ceiling, which will set the minimum value, and then we're going to do a max, which sets the maximum value of the numbers, and then it returns math.floor math random, generate a random number times max take away minimum plus min. Bada bada bing. There we go. So we've got our that's our function that we're going to which will return our. What have I done there? Okay, I've just done something in the wrong place, a bracket in the wrong place. Let's just check. Oh yeah, there needs to be a bracket there. That should work now. Okay, so let's now create a function for the roll dice, which is basically where I wouldn't say it's magic, but it's where everything comes together really. That's where the actual rolling presentation and everything sort of comes together, is here. So open brackets to open that, and then we're going to do create a new variable called random number, which will be called every time this function is called. We're going to call our get random integer function. And we're going to set the minimum to 1, maximum to 6. So it's passing in these values for the minimum and the max. We'll do that. Then we go for our show class equals show, and then we want the random number that's going to be passed through random number. So basically what it does is stores sets this class to the show and then the random number. We want to do this, check the condition, if there is a current class, the cube which you've got stored above, if you remember, class list, we want to remove the current class, whatever the current class is. So if there's a current class there, remove it, and then cube, we want to add to the class list. We're going to add the class show class, which you stored above, remember, with the random number. Show class. Then we want to assign current class to the show class. Remember, equals is assignment in JavaScript. There we go. Set the initial state by just doing roll dice. And then we also want to add an on-click event for the roll button. So for here, let's actually detect that. So that the add an event listener basically for the on-click event. It's just vanilla JavaScript, so it's just with using vanilla.js methods. I'm not using a framework or anything for this. Now let's see if it works. Or if I've misspelled something along the way. That should work. Let me just check my console, something's gone wrong. I don't know what exactly went wrong there, but for some reason I think I just must have misspelled something up here. Probably. That works now. Click the button. Let's just have a look on the. You can see in the. I've just added a console log to show what's going on here. Let's go on to developer tools and just pin this to the left again. You can see that show is being the class is being changed. It's applying the transform, and it's getting to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 5, etc., etc. So there we go. We've got a working 3D dice. Rolls around, a little bit of 3D CSS. I know it was probably a bit hard to follow when I made that mistake. I do apologise for that with the divs. It's sort of a not the easiest mistake to make, but not the hardest either. It's just a silly mistake. One of those things you just get stuck on, I guess, sometimes. But that shows you how to make this bit of 3D CSS and a little bit of JavaScript to get a dice running in browser. So I hope that's been useful. I've been Noir Nerd. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe if you like the content. I usually do tutorials like this every few weeks at least. Alright, bye bye.